All right, so we are recording. And if you see a little thing that pops up asking you for your permission, just grant it. I know that's been happening on the Zoom calls that I've been on recently. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. So if it is, give permission. So this is our little bonus time for being on the Facebook launch team for Messy Hope. And Tina has graciously agreed to give us some of her time, and she's one of the endorsers in the book. She's a licensed mental health counselor, and she's an author, and she's one of my Advanced Writers and Speakers Association sisters. So we've got a few overlapping connections, and I get to see her next week at the Christian Product Expo and the conference. So I'm pretty excited. Anyway, so that, and Tina's also, she's a life coach, and her book, Beautiful Warrior, was just, well, really fairly recently published, the last couple of years, I think. And she has a podcast called Flourishment. And if you haven't heard it yet, you definitely need to tune in. She is the host extraordinaire, I have to say. So I'm learning from her for sure on how to do all that. So anyway, so we are going to talk about a topic that's actually pretty close to both Tina's heart and my heart. And the part of mental health, of what we can do, where we can be emotionally safe people for our loved ones who are struggling, and how we can find or help our kids find emotionally safe people. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So because we don't have a lot of time, I just think we're going to jump right into it. And if you wanted to refer to anything in the book, page 44 in my hard copy, which is probably similar to your downloaded copy, it would be right around there. If it's not 44, it's close. And it's under the, it's in the hard world chapter, and soften the hard world section, just before resilience strengtheners. There's a little assessment for having an emotionally safe home. And we're going to talk about being emotionally safe people for our kids, and helping our kids find those emotionally safe friends, along with even us. Because when our kids or loved ones are struggling, we need a little support too. And anyway, Tina, if you could just give us a little bit of that Tina Yeagar wisdom, we'd love to hear it.
So finding emotionally safe people is tricky for adults. It's especially tricky for kids. And I think all of us, even me as a therapist, have had experiences with finding people that didn't turn out to be as safe as you thought they would be. People that gossip. Anybody came across those? And the rule is, if they're gossiping to you, they're going to gossip about you. So just because it's all about all the other people when they're talking to you doesn't mean you're not going to be the victim of it soon, and you probably will. And I know we've all experienced that, but conveying that to our kids is not something they're going to figure out on their own. And if they do, they'll learn it the hard way. So that's a good thing. It's a good teachable moment to talk to your kids about those who don't guard people's personal information as if it's valuable. So that's one key thing I think we can learn as moms and as adults and as women, and something that we can teach to our children. If someone tells you something that's personal, it is not a matter for entertaining all of your other friends with that information. That is gossip, even if you say, bless their heart afterwards, or you say, well, let's just pray for them. That does not make it not gossip. It's still gossip if they didn't give you permission to share it.
Got that little spiritual spin. Sometimes we like that little spiritual spin, and that makes it feel like it's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we justify it to ourselves a little bit better that way, but the
Mhm.
reason you're saying it is not to get prayer support for that person. It's usually so I have something entertaining to say when I ran out of things to say. And we're more afraid of silence in our groups of friendships, and so are our kids, than we are of violating somebody else's confidence. And we need to try to talk to our kids about that, about how important and sacred that is, so that they value that in their own sharing as well as in what other people share with them, and they learn to recognize that.
Yeah, Tina, I've had some thoughts, and you guys feel free to jump in as well. That, you know, there are some folks that I've noticed um, that really want to ask you what I would consider personal questions. And maybe for me, not so much during this messy hope time with my daughter Kendra and her suicide, attempt, but more maybe when I was working on my messy journey book. I had a lot of people wanting to ask me certain questions, which I was open to, but then I realized some of those questions it really wasn't because there was a genuine feeling of caring. It was more nosy. So
Mhm.
that kind of spills over a little bit into the gossip, like the motivation for people being interested. So how do we help our kids sort of determine who a safe person is, like who's someone that's going to hold that, and they're asking because they care, or somebody else who's asking because they're just kind of nosy? How do
I
you?
think we teach them those circles of trust and sharing. Jesus had them. He had large circles where he taught the 4,000, and he had smaller circles that went in with him for more intimate times of teaching inside homes where they were having dinners together. And then he had even smaller circles with the 12. And then he had an even smaller circle of 3 with whom he shared his deepest pain and his deepest suffering. Because some, even in that 12, were not trustworthy, especially Judas, who
Yeah.
ended up betraying him. But he did not exclude him from that group. He simply knew not to trust him with certain things. And I
Mhm.
think that's important. We have circles, and with to the degree to which they've shown they can be trustworthy, we can trust them more. But you don't have to trust people right away. And that is an indication of unhealthiness, an attachment issue. If someone wants to trust you with everything all at once right away, that can be a red flag that that person has attachment issues. Someone with attachment disorder can do that. They'll want to trust you right away, and then they'll intentionally sabotage that relationship later because they want to control when it ends, because they've had some issues, like say this person was abused or neglected as a child or adopted or something like that. Not everybody that was abused or adopted has attachment issues, but it tends to be prevalent in those situations because their trust was violated when they were very young. They weren't able to trust, and so they'll trust right away because they want connection, but then they'll sabotage it. So teach your kids to know, you don't give away everything right away. You do as Jesus did, and you trust everyone a little, and then a little bit more and a little bit more in stages as people. You don't share your whole deepest, darkest, this would be painful if you stabbed me here, most vulnerable place, with
Mhm.
someone who hasn't shown themselves to be trustworthy in your life with smaller things.
Yeah, that's good. And I think even with our kids, we can take those circles and actually like write it down, not just in
Mhm.
our head. It's
Yeah.
having something really concrete. I know that I've done that with one of my kiddos who has issues with maybe saying a little bit too much. And so we have worked out those circles and really talked about that. And I think that's a good exercise, even personally, for me as well, and to have it concrete, to write it down. Oh, like, oh yeah, okay, you know this person is more like one of the 12 I can share some things with, but I don't want to have them come around and bite me like
Yes.
Judas, right? And that's very painful. I've had that happen. I'm sure. Has anybody else had that happen in a relationship, in a friendship?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Those are, anybody want to speak to the gossip or the guarding the information, the circles? Anybody got any questions for Tina regarding any of that? I think that's really good.
I love that illustration. That's very good.
Mhm, mhm.
Right.
I have a relative that does share a lot of personal information about other people. And so because of that, I've stopped sharing personal information with her. It's kind of sad, but
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, that sounds smart, right, Tina?
Mhm.
That
Oh,
once
yeah.
you know, you've learned.
Mhm.
And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I forget, like if I'm in a situation with someone and, I really, okay, so here's the people pleasing part. I like people to like me, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
so then I'm kind of like, if there's this great thing going on, like a lot of fun, then I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. Okay, we're back on track. And then I kind of let my guard down. And then I've like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. That was so dumb. And then you end up getting hurt again. So to remember what God's shown you, I think is good.
Yeah.
And I think we love everybody, but you don't have to trust everybody just because
Mhm.
you love them.
Yeah.
You trust them with what they're able to handle. And that
Mhm.
doesn't mean you don't love them. And I think that we sort of feel guilty when we have to say,
Yeah.
this person isn't able to handle that responsibility of that
Mhm.
information. It's not because
Mhm.
they're a bad person, they're just not
Mhm.
capable of being trustworthy with
Mhm.
that. So knowing the difference, it's kind of like you may have a relative that has Parkinson's or something, and their hands shake. So you don't hand them the tray of china and crystal to carry into the living room. Not because you don't love Aunt Judy. You love Aunt Judy, but Aunt Judy's going to break the china and the crystal if you give that to her, not
Mhm.
because she's trying to break it, but because that's her limitation. And
Yeah.
some people are limited in their ability to be emotionally healthy with
Mhm.
your information, and they can't
Mhm.
respond well.
Mhm.
So know that that's just their limitation and see it that
Mhm.
way. It kind of makes it easier to set that boundary. It's not saying that you don't love them or you're being judgy. It's just
Mhm.
being discerning and knowing this person isn't ready for that. They're not able to
Mhm.
handle that yet.
Mhm.
Oh, that is good. I love the Parkinson's
Mhm.
illustration.
Mhm.
That is so good. That is so good.
And actually, another step by not giving Aunt Judy that plate, you're saving her the embarrassment
Right.
of it ending up poorly. So, it's a way to honor them too by giving them appropriate tasks or appropriate information,
Mm.
because it allows them to maybe be more successful in a
Yeah.
way.
Oh, that's
Mhm.
smart. That's good. So those are some ways that we can find and help our kids find emotionally safe people that can be part of our support system. Tina, do you have anything more to add to that, or are you ready to move on to how we can be that person for our kids? Do you have
I know one other thing to kind of keep in mind is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Any form of that can make it very difficult for people to filter what they say when they think it. So,
Mhm.
and that's another issue. It's kind of like a limitation. And some people learn to overcome that and filter and not say something somebody told them that they shouldn't be sharing. So that can be an issue where you kind of go, oh, they don't mean to, but they share everything that pops in their head, and they're not trying to be a gossip. They just can't filter it before they say it out loud.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to keep in mind. You can love them, but know that this may be an area where it's hard for them to, resist the temptation to share.
that impulsivity?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, does anybody have any questions on that before we move into the next section?
Hmm.
Any response at all? Just
Wish I had done that earlier, but
it's true. I know, live and learn, right? So, okay. So Tina, now how can we be the best support system for our loved ones? What can we do for our kiddos or for, another loved one who is going through either anxiety, depression, or suicidal ideation? What are some ways that we can best be a helper? Because, as we know, so often our kids, we raise our kids sadly to be independent, and then we are like, wow, why don't they reach out for help? Well, because we've had this whole philosophy of independence going on. How can we assist our kids and be in that inner circle for them? What would be some good things that we could do?
I think we can ask open-ended, not yes or no questions, and that's really hard to think of, especially when your kids get older and they get into that teenage and new adult stage of life. Asking them things like, "You seem tired. Tell me if there's something stressful that might be going on," or ask specific questions. How are things going at work? And also, before you ask those questions, if you haven't already established it, let them know, this is what I love about being with you and spending time with you. And I want you to know that I will always be there for you.
Mm.
It's okay to sound really sappy with your kids when they get older, even, and say, I'll always be there. And there's nothing that you can tell me that's going to make me love you less, or think less of you, or be overly burdened to the point where I can't handle what you're telling me. It's okay to tell me things. I'm okay with it, because when you tell me, I will only bring it to God, and that's the only one I'm going to tell. So you can tell me these things that you're feeling whenever it is, and I want to be able to be there for you in anything. And then you can move into those deeper questions and say, you seem tired. You don't seem to be as responsive to the things that you used to like to do lately, like you used to. Tell me what's going on that's stressing you, that might be making you feel tired. Are you having issues with your mood or emotion on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being, I want to conquer the world and I feel awesome, like I just had a pot of coffee every morning before I've had any, and 1 being, I wish I could just sink into the mud of the earth and disappear. So tell me where you are on that spectrum. So give them something specific to say to you in response on where their mood is. And you can do that with anxiety or depression to get them to give you feedback, or even just stress. Have them tell you where they are with stress. Sometimes they're more willing to reveal stress first and emotion second. And that might be an easier thing to do. And you can tell them a little bit, and you're not going to burden them with it, like making them your counselor, because that's too much for them to be your kid and your counselor. But you can say, I've been through a stressful time this year, and I'm so glad I had friends that supported me. I had to reach out to them and get them to pray for me, and I'm feeling better now. So telling them that you went through something and you got support is really good, because that teaches them that you're a real person and you may have already been through something that they can relate to. So being honest with them to a degree, not here, I want you to feel sorry for me and be my counselor, but I've been through things and I've had some help and overcome it by reaching out. So those are a couple of things to start
Wow,
with.
those are awesome things. And I know when my daughter was struggling, part of her not fully explaining her struggles was she was actually trying to protect me. Like, she didn't want to, you said she didn't want to burden me with it, and she was like watching out for me when it should have been the other way around, and reaching out for help. And I love how you have the open-ended questions. This is such a great tool to reflect what you're seeing back, say what you're seeing, and then ask the question. Oh my gosh, that is so good. I noticed you're a little more tired, and then here comes the question. And that's brilliant. That's such a good technique. And to reassure them that you will always be there, and no matter what they say, you're still going to be there. You're still going to love them. That, reminding them of their belonging and security is secure. And those are so good. And when I work with, with my own clients, we always do that check-in with a scale of 1 to 10. How are you doing? And then take those feeling words after they've given a number and attach some feeling words to that. That really helps to start a conversation. But I also loved what you said about the stress. They're more willing, for some reason, that's like socially acceptable. What is that? Why is it more socially acceptable to feel a little stressed than a little anxious or a little depressed, or, why is that? But you're right. It is. That's the beginning question. Are you feeling a little stressed? That's awesome. Anybody else got any thoughts on what Tina has been saying? It's really great stuff.
Maybe another step with that is something I find with one of my adult kids is that I have limited contact with him. Oftentimes it's text messages, and sometimes they're answered, 2-3 days later. So, and I do know that if I ask him, so how are you doing? Can you give me an update? I usually don't get anything. And when we're together, I don't want to just give him my list of questions, because yes, I'm really concerned how he's doing, but I don't want to dump that on him because I don't want him to associate. Mom's just going to ask me how I'm doing, and I have to go to this place that I don't really want to go. So I'm really challenged. How much can I ask those tougher questions, but yet be a little more lighthearted? Because the truth is that I just enjoy being in his presence and, chatting. So I don't want to drop the ball, but I don't want to over stress him. Like, Mom's only going to ask me, how I'm doing and how my depression is, and if I'm seeing a counselor, and, all those questions that he doesn't love to answer. So what's the balance?
I would say don't lead with the deep questions. Start out with being fun and connecting, because people bond through play. So you can start with that. And then as you go in, and you can kind of transition by saying, I so enjoy your presence. I do want you to know how much I dearly love and cherish you. And I have to ask how things are going, because I love and cherish my time with you. And then transition a little bit into that and say, I just want to spend a quick second before we get back to chatting, checking in with how things are going, because my heart is in making sure that you are doing okay. And if you're not, letting you know that I'm here for you, to pray for you. And I know how to specifically pray for you. Whether your kids are Christians or not, you need to let them know that I want to be praying for you, because that's who I am. And I'm going to be supporting you in prayer. I don't have to take it to my prayer group unless you give me permission to do that. But I want to be praying specifically for what you need right now. And that can be the question. How can I specifically be supporting you when I go to God in prayer over you? Because I'm going to. You know that I love you and I cherish you, and I'm going to be doing that. And you can say that with a smile.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to say that with I have tears in my eyes moment. You can say, I'm going to be praying for you, and I want to be praying as powerfully as I can. So give me some specific things that I can be praying over for you.
That's good. Good. Thank you.
That is really good. Wow. So,
and that's not to say I've never made mistakes on that same kind of stuff. And I think another thing is that you need to tell your kids you're sorry if you do make a mistake. It's okay. We're going to make mistakes, and they need to see how we respond to that. Because if they don't see how we metabolize having made a mistake, they're going to think they have to be perfect all the time, and there's no way to recover from it. So if they see you have made a mistake and you don't know how to recover from making a mistake without feeling like you've failed, then they're not going to think they can do it either. So going to them when you haven't done it right and apologizing and letting them know that they're important enough to you that you're willing to do that hard moment of saying, I screwed up. I'm so sorry. I should not have responded to you that way.
Right. Tina, would you encourage praying with them on the spot once they've shared that stuff?
Yeah.
If
You ask them first.
Yeah.
You say,
Okay.
can I pray with you about that right now? Would that be okay
Yeah.
with you? Because once you've gotten their permission, there's a lot more power in that prayer. There's an authority that they have
Yes.
given you over that
Yes.
situation spiritually. And then you
Yes.
have the spiritual authority to do that. So yes,
Yeah.
ask their permission.
Mhm.
And most people, even if they're not Christians, really are okay with saying,
Mhm.
sure, you can
Mhm.
pray about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Okay.
That's good. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, so I just thought maybe if something really resonated with you that Tina had spoken, she's given us some really great tools on how to be a safe person for our kids and how to help our kids and ourselves find a safe person. I mean, something's resonated with you. It's kind of an encouragement once you've done, you've laid some stuff out to hear how how you might handle something differently the next time when you're in a situation. So if something resonated with you, let's tell Tina what you're thinking and how that affected you.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Anybody got one?
I really liked how you said not to jump into the big things right away, because I think as parents, that's what we want to know. So we immediately want to jump into the big questions, but it is good to make a point of connection first and make sure that they're listening and they're ready to share, even if they're not ready to share, but we've laid a little bit of a foundation first before we just jump into the big things.
and they probably won't. A lot of times kids that are feeling deep hurt are not going to give that to you right away. The first time they might deny it. Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Okay, well, if you're ever not fine, I just want you to know it's okay to tell me, because
Mhm.
they're going to deny it the first time, maybe the second time, maybe even the third time. But eventually, if you keep responding to them and saying, hey, I'm here for you if you're ever not fine, then they'll come around to telling you. Or you can say, I can find someone for you if you don't want to talk to me.
Mm. Right.
Okay, maybe one other person, because I just got the little flash that we're running out of time.
Mm.
Somebody else has something they'd like to share, but I like that too, Emily. Okay, well, Tina, you've given us some great tools. Thank you so much. And you guys, thanks for joining us. And hopefully it was helpful to you and to your loved ones that going forward, really.
Yeah.
And appreciate everybody's participation in this. It's really great.
Mhm.
So Tina, coming up, tell us about your summit.
Oh, I'm starting a new course, a new academy. And the first course in the 10-minute turnarounds academy is Subdue Stress and Anxiety. And Lori is one of my guest presenters on there. And we will launch this with a webinar called Frayed Not, F-R-A-Y-E-D, not. It's kind of a play on words because we all feel frayed and stressed and anxious right now. And we will be launching from that webinar September 18th at 12:30. I think it is on that Saturday, and that's Eastern time. And we will be launching into that with a discount for those who are on the webinar to start that course right when that webinar hits. And it's 10 weeks long, 10 weeks, 10 minutes a day, and you can transform your life from being stressed and anxious to being able to manage all of that with confidence and peace in your life.
So Tina, where can they find you if they have questions? Do you have a website or where can people connect with you?
It's tinayeagar.com. Pretty much everything is on there. You can also find me here on Facebook and on Instagram and all of those places. I could probably give Lori the links to list so you don't have to get them
Sure.
from the recording, from
Yeah,
audio and video.
that'd be
So
awesome. We'll do that. And then coming up next week, we are talking to Emily. So Emily has her PhD in education, and she and her family have gone through a great tragedy. They had the house that they had just built, they just moved in, just fully destroyed by the California fires. And I don't know if you guys have gotten to that place in Messy Hope. But I'm sure you can even just see Emily right now. She is a hope-filled person, and the things that she learned in that journey and how she and her husband navigated that with their little kids. It's really inspiring. So I hope you'll come back next week. The time, I think the time might be different. I think it's later in the afternoon, but we'll have that posted. So I'm excited that Emily's going to share her story. I love her very much, and to see the things that they have gone through, and just the resiliency and beyond is amazing. So anyway, Tina, thanks for your time. And Anita, Katie, Sandy, Emily, Mary, thanks so much for joining us. And I hope it was a blessing to you.
Oh, it was. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. It
Thank
was such
you.
a joy to meet all of you. Thank you, Lori,
Yes.
so much.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.